Hello and welcome to a new episode of DRUID Talks. Today's episode is How Will ChatGPT Impact the Future of Businesses? And today I have a very good friend of mine, Tom Allen, who is the founder of the AI Journal and an AI enthusiast, coming to answer all of the questions that you and I need to know over the next period of time. Tom, welcome to DRUID Talks. How are you?
Excited to be here, Kieran. Really appreciate you having me on. I've seen a few of these and it's exciting to be speaking with you as we've done in the past and talk around some really fascinating topics. When you mentioned it to me, I wanted to jump on and get into conversation with you about it. So thank you for having me on.
Pleasure, sir. So, right, let's jump straight into this and grab some of these answers. So we'll get into how will ChatGPT impact the future of business. So first question, Tom. I'm sure you've tested it. I've tested it. I think millions of other people have done the same thing in the first week after its launch.
Yeah.
But why is there so much hype around ChatGPT?
I think there's too much hype around ChatGPT as a starting point. I mean, there's a lot of people talking around it. And from the research I've done, I mean, it's not the way it's scaled and the way it's been brought in and the way it's been marketed, I guess, to a certain degree. It's not massively revealing way that it works. But I think it's because people have opened up their doors to, I'd say creativity is a big point of it. I mean, I've seen so many examples of creativity in business use case, in ways of it being implemented either into the consumer, from people using it to pass university exams, right through to people understanding different language models and different contexts of language, especially if you're in the NLP space. So it's a real great way. And I mean, when I look at it, it's something that's clearly caught the buzz. And I guess I don't actually have an answer for why it scaled so quickly. I've just watched the search results and I saw some stat showing how long it took Facebook to get to like 1 million users. And it was like 5 weeks, and it showed Instagram and it showed ChatGPT and it was like a day or something ridiculous. It was just how it's gone through so quickly is remarkable, but it's a very powerful tool and it's definitely not going away. So very excited to see what we can do with it in a business case and a personal day-to-day case.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was fascinating for myself to work out why did it suddenly explode, because it's a cool tool, but ChatGPT 1 and 2 have been around for a while and Google have done their own thing as well. So again, but maybe it just caught the zeitgeist. Maybe it was a moment sitting there where there was nothing else to talk about, or maybe people quickly realized the power of it because it does seem powerful.
Yeah,
but if I ask you this,
quickly,
sorry, Tom.
It's like sliced bread. Sliced bread was around 20 years before it got made popular. I always go back to that analogy. It's just like no one liked it, and then they did a certain marketing trick, and now everyone has sliced bread. So maybe it's the same sort of deal that someone just found the right way to market it to the right person, and that's how we are in a situation where it's going so big today.
So, Tom, for those who don't know what it is, just give us a little bit of a definition then. So what is ChatGPT and how does it work, please?
Well, in my definition, or the way that I look at it, it's something it's conversational AI that's run on a large subset of data, reinforcement learning, and looking at it's very, I think the word's derivative, so it looks at very past history, which is why it gets its obviously challenges that I think we'll look at a bit later. But it's really just a very well optimized chatbot that can scour and look through and go and slice right through God knows how much data to get you an answer that's creative, reasonably actionable, reasonably helpful, but also has quite a lot of challenges on the ethical or bias side. And the reason why I think it's got a long way to go, and I think you might have seen, Kieran, the update around Lambda getting absolutely criticized in the press, I think towards the end of mid last week, where they just showed faults and they showed it was less than 60% accurate or something. And I'd ask people to double check that, but it's a real powerful tool for businesses, and it's something that it's just a very sophisticated chatbot that can use a lot of data, use a lot of machine learning, and use a lot of reinforced learning to get you an answer a lot quicker in a lot more practical solution and a lot faster way. I actually had to tell someone what my definition was or how it works the other week. So it's always a good question. It's similar to the question I used to get, which was, tell me what AI is. And I was like, well, I could have 1,001 different definitions for you. It depends what context you want me to put it in. So it's, or I've heard 1,001 different definitions, but yeah, very powerful chatbot in my opinion to keep it simple.
Because it does go back, I suppose, you mentioned earlier on, the variety of uses, because I had an interesting one. I was testing it the other week. And I had a word list, and I filled in the word list, and I typed into ChatGPT, what I want you to do is turn the list into a paragraph. And it did it, really nicely written. And then I said, now turn it into a paragraph like McKinsey would write. And off it did that. Then I've used it as a search engine as well to look up data around the series that I was doing for LinkedIn. And it was able to do that as well. So I'm sure that's why people are confused as to what it is or what it isn't. It just appears to be a super cognitive tool that allows you to do 1,001 things if you know what to ask it to do. And maybe therein is the skill.
Well, that's it. It's the versatility, right? Like you can use it for finding coding, and you can go and help it do like SQL checking, like things that wouldn't appeal to me, but people love that kind of area. But things that would appeal to me, and you can get it to write code, for example. But you know as well as me, Kieran, we both love to write. I mean, you've got your amazing book out, and sometimes you get writer's block. I mean, this just takes that straight away. Put in a title, put in an idea. Want to write a poem for, I mean, it's Valentine's Day today. If you want to write a poem for your loved ones, I mean, there's 1,001 different examples, and I really, that's what I say. It can be unbiased, but it really depends on the context you're using it in. If you're as what we might use it as the AI journal, if we've got an editor thinking of what the story is, what's going to be a hit, or a good marketer, it's a great tool in that aspect. But again, it can also be used to help you with coding, to help you write a new song that's never been heard before, so it can collect data and say this is a combination that's not been used. I mean, in a business sense, I mean, you can see how important it is, or how important it can be. I wouldn't say immediately, but over the next 5-10 years, and I always have the longer view for things like insurance, medical records, things where it's going to be very hard to go through that data. And I mean, one thing I noticed with that, or I'm very aware of from what people that are experts in the field that run big conversational companies, and similar to what DRUID are doing, is the context can change everything. It's like if you say the words Johnny bit the dog or the dog bit Johnny, it's the same words, but has completely different meanings, completely different contexts. And I think that's why it's scaled so much, because you can use it for one area of marketing, or you can use it for another area of marketing. You could use it for creative strategies, or you could use it for creative writing. You could use it for writing a certain piece of code or finding a bug in the code. I mean, it's various different angles is how I'd look at it. And that's why I'd say my definition of a very sophisticated and intelligent chatbot that you can get for free.
Well, I suppose then that leads me to the next question. Just, is there a shade of originality or creativity about ChatGPT, or is it pastiche in that if it's been trained on historical data, can it write a poem? Can it write a song, for example, or is it just going to regurgitate and reconstruct and reorder what's already created?
That's a great question. It's a tricky one to answer. I don't think it's ever. I think the only way you can be original is if you come up with something yourself. I mean, that's something that I always try and stick to. You can use it to. And I mean, most things in this world now, it's very rare you see something that's brand new. I think the last time I really saw something of significance was, if top of mind, I mean, maybe there's something since then, but the iPhone, it just changed everything, right? And I mean, it's a substandard one to use, but you look back at it and you just think, if you'd have told me in 2000 or 2000, even the year before it came out, 2007, 2006, that you can have a web browser, music, all these things in one phone, and it's going to be touchscreen, I'd say you're full of rubbish. Like, it's not possible. And it's just, and now we take it for granted. We have God knows how much now. No one buys digital cameras unless you're a proper photographer and videographer. And maybe it will be the same, that it changes trends, but I don't think it will. Well, it will change trends, but I don't think just using consistent backlog data and using machine learning, and I think it will lead to innovations, but I don't think itself will change much, if that's a good answer, because I just don't see how it can. I mean, it's always going to be working off past data. It's never going to be. It can predict, but I can't see it creating, which is a hard thing to explain. I can't see it pushing off a production line, a brand new product. It might give you a 3D drawing of an idea, but at the end of the day, it's still humans that make that decision. It's still, I always say, I'm never going to see a chatbot sell to another chatbot. I mean, maybe I will one day, but even then, it's a business behind each business, and it's a person behind that business. So essentially, when you go to the root cause, it's not, in theory, it might be a chatbot selling to a chatbot, but it's still, I've never seen a chatbot take money and buy a mortgage, put it that way. So I don't think it can be creative. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You could maybe have your digital assistant go and find the best mortgage based on the,
Yeah.
financial history that it was able to look up. But I get what you're saying there around creativity. I suppose we always compare it to humans, and it reminds me of the movie I, Robot, where Will Smith said to the robot, can you create a symphony from scratch? Can you draw like Michelangelo? And what was quite funny is the robot then turned around and says, "Can you?" And it's a little bit, we're comparing crazy things. I think there is only 14 chords of music in the English alphabet. There's 26 letters. A wheel is a wheel is a wheel. But it's interesting how we as humans suddenly create differences, even in amongst that mix. But I'm forever surprised, which is, I suppose, why we're in technology space. So I suppose if I move on to the question, what do you think makes it different from previous innovations in conversational AI?
Well, I think it's obviously the way it's been marketed is a big one because people understand it a lot more and can. I mean, you see university students using it before you really. And I mean, that's something I get really, I guess, and my not anger, but kind of annoyance with it is that people that aren't in work technically or don't really know, unless you're doing a master's degree or something, what's available to you. And I think this has really opened that conversation of what AI is. And I've had all sorts of people that never looked at what I was doing, like, oh, he's some nerd or some geek or whatever. He's involved in very tech, whatever labeled I might put. And now they're talking about it while we have a beer. And I'm just like, it's brought into our social lives very, very quickly and it's introduced a lot of people that necessarily wouldn't know what AI, and I think it sparked a lot more conversations around what it is, what it can do, and it's kind of very similar to, I guess, what certain people might say around bigger factors, like you're ignoring, if you're taking climate change, if you're ignoring it and you're hoping it goes away, whereas with AI, you're ignoring it and thinking it won't take my jobs, and now it's making it very real. And I'm not for against that argument. I think it's a bit of a silly argument because it's going to take jobs. But I mean, time and time again, the research shows it's creating so many more jobs than it's getting rid of. It's just increasing demand for higher creative jobs and the amount of jobs it's created since it's gone away. But I mean, that's a different conversation, and it always sparks a nerve because I'm like, well, if you did a research, it's creating a lot more jobs that we don't even have the jobs for. So it's an ongoing debate. But I mean, that's where I'd see it really as being a lot different because it's just it's opened the floor to a lot more people that wouldn't understand it. And I mean, the big thing is you don't know. I don't know many tools where I can go in where people want to actively go in and trial it and use it. I don't see people wanting to go to an RPA tool or go to an NLP platform or go to a piece of automation and start trialing it. With this, I can go ask what film or what movie or something very, very personal to me. And once you have a hands-on experience, it gives you this is quite interesting. It's a much more hands-on approach compared to how we've been using AI before. If I was to look at it in my personal view,
maybe that's a bit like the iPhone, is that because the interface is so simple that people are willing to use it a lot more, and maybe that's down to software design. But see, if you look back at the history of conversational AI, then what do you see is the difference between a simple chatbot, ChatGPT, and an enterprise conversational AI assistant?
So I mean, I think you told me about it actually, like the future of looking at every single person in work, and I think it's maybe part of UiPath's mission to have a robot for every single person. And I think that's where it's looking at that question, it's much more applicable to businesses because I mean, I'd love a personal assistant in work and being able to book things and being able to do things for us. But I mean, the chatbots before, as well as I do, sometimes I don't even, or at least I wouldn't say as as well as I do, but you could probably understand my stress when I've spoke to chatbots before in the past 5 years. I still think at times you're not helping. I want to get through to an advisor, whereas ChatGPT is just working on, from what I can see, much more relevant data and insight and things that aren't just pre-programmed. It's just using a wealth of knowledge from a library. God knows, I don't think even if you put all 6 billion people on looking at that library of data, it'd be able to go through it all in the way that ChatGPT can, or whatever else is coming out with Fard and Lambda and all these kind of cool areas that are going to excel what we do in search, but not just in search, as you said, in business context. I was speaking to a company yesterday with how they're doing it for medical records and insurance records, and it's such a big way, and I think it's such a big issue around things like language translation. If you're in travel and if you're booking travel for 100 employees or whatever to get over that, or 1,000, or getting over simplification or dialogues, it's so powerful. And it's using that in a business sense. You can using it in a strategy sense. You're looking at your OKRs or KPIs within a business, having that kind of assistance. It can get rid of almost what I'd call like a writer's block or a strategic block, which a pre-programmed chatbot that you're trying to book a certain or buy a certain e-commerce product through, or buy a certain plane ticket, just can't do. And now I think it's opened up the doors to all of that kind of thing to get very personal at scale. Yeah.
It'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Because imagine if you had a conversational AI assistant just watch and monitor what you're doing every day. I think if it watched me, I would kind of hate if it described that as intelligence and started to repeat it. But if it could do stuff, when I'm not there 24/7, like go and book the flight, sort out the calendar, sort out the meetings, answer questions, complete a piece of research. But where do you see ChatGPT as applicable to the enterprise? What are those good use cases that I'm describing? Or do you think ChatGPT will be applicable to the enterprise now or not yet or ever?
Now, yeah, it's 100% applicable. I just think it's got a lot of challenges to get over it. I mean, there's a lot of things or areas that the big thing for me is trust. I mean, you've seen it all around fake news, and I watched literally, I think it's Steve that posted it on LinkedIn, and it shows you Leonardo DiCaprio doing a speech at the United Nations around climate change, and they've fixed it to have like 6 different people using his language or putting their voices over what he's saying. They use like Kim Kardashian, the president, all these different people. And I think that's a big thing for us. It's trust. It's making sure we're, and I think a lot of companies, I see DRUID do it, and it's the power of educational marketing is so important. But educational marketing can only work if you're being honest, if you're being factual. And I think a lot of companies are switching towards that route because they know helping a customer is what's going to get them as a customer. And I think that's where ChatGPT can be very powerful in the enterprise without diverging too much off the original question. But also there's a lot of things that they need to be careful of. I mean, from the creative side, it's brilliant, but in short, yeah, it's definitely for the enterprise. It's not going away. And if you think people that are in powerful positions that have the spend are going to just be ignoring this once they're seeing all the opportunities unlock, it's just not going to happen. I just can't. Well, maybe it will. I can't see the future, but I just don't see it happening that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I sort of look at enterprise use, and I do worry about people's jobs.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, and without getting too excited about ChatGPT, just looking at generative AI, someone gave the comparison that, 100 years ago, tractors took, thousands, if not millions of people out of the fields and put them into factories.
Yeah.
If all this data and information is available at scale, personalized with intellect, and you used the example a moment ago, medical records. I actually look at the medical industry and think people are so under pressure. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And if I had a digital assistant as a medical professional beside me, looking up the latest research, finding the latest tablets, scanning every piece of, patient data that's possible in there, and augmenting me and helping me make better decisions, or even front end, getting lots of questions answered by patients or healthcare or whatever else, and organizing all those things. It might actually protect me and save me getting sued quite a few times.
Yeah.
But how do you ensure, Tom, that organizations use ChatGPT responsibly, or other similar large language models inside of their organizations? So there's the responsibility side of it, and then how do they measure whether they are being responsible, effective, or getting an ROI out of this type of technology?
Yeah. So I think it comes, if it was my personal opinion, I think it comes down to, and I think you might agree with this as well, Kieran, it comes down to the business and the business leaders and making sure that they've got the frameworks for success in their business. I mean, you can have any tool. It might not be ChatGPT. And that's why I think we're getting excited about it. But 10 years from now, God knows where we're going to be, because this is just, I always say, like, everything leaps and bounds, and this is like a breakthrough that's going to lead to, in a year, it will just be a standard plugin that is part of your software stack or whatever. I honestly believe that. I don't think it will be, and people will build on other things, and another 5 years, something bigger will come. And I think it will always come down to making sure you've got the right training, right processes. Would you trust a doctor? And I mean, if a doctor came up to you and hadn't trained for 20 years, would you trust him to give you surgery, or would you trust him to do a diagnosis? Probably not. And that's why those fields are regulated, like lawyers and doctors and people, even masseuses, like they need to get regulated and get checked. And I think it's the same with businesses. If you don't train your people, if you don't train your staff, if you don't invest in understanding these new technologies and what implications, or whether it's data protection or how you handle your data or where it's kept or whatever it might be, you're probably not in a very good spot for using something like ChatGPT, because God knows, I mean, you see the problems time and time again. I mean, you saw it with Wirecard, like the big Netflix thing. You saw it with Enron all those years ago. There's always companies that are massive, and the one company, Elizabeth Holmes, that started with the blood analyzing software, time and time again, how poor leadership can lead to bad decisions, and they can be big billion-pound brands that get it wrong. Big billion-pound brands get their hiring wrong, as you're seeing at the moment with all the big tech firms laying off staff. And I think going full circle with what I'm saying about diverging is, if you're bringing something like ChatGPT, the only way, if you're a responsible company and you clearly look after what implications it has, it's going to be a successful tool for you. I mean, and that comes down to it. If you have people that are just left to their own devices and you aren't training them on how to use it, how to look after their customers, how to do all these things, how to be creative, how to use it. And you mentioned a very good point, Kieran, with medical people, with the NHS or private institutions, whatever it might be. It's not letting the software or ChatGPT make the decision. It's using that research. And I completely disagree that ChatGPT should be writing all these articles, and I've seen people boast that it's writing. And I think you are probably going to be flagged or I'd be very cautious that one's going to get under the radar. Someone's going to scoop it up from 4 years ago, and you're going to be in big trouble. I mean, you're seeing it with Man City in football at the moment. They're only just coming to, and it's those kind of things that can lurk there. And then all of a sudden it can set off a spiral chain of events if you don't properly look at it. So that's why I'm personally very against using it solely for creating a full article and just posting it regardless. But 100% use it for research and 100% use it for those areas. And again, that's why I'm 100% against it making decisions at the moment for places like insurance, medical, where it can have God knows what repercussions. And we've seen it time and time again where it can have horrible things, but to make the decision. But it's 100% got a business use. And if people use it in the correct way, are trained to use it in the correct way, and use it, I think it's a very powerful tool. I don't think it's a bad thing to use.
Well, you see some of the stuff you mentioned there, though, Tom, the usual scandals, and even my term, the usual scandals, is as if I accept them. I don't accept them at all.
Yeah.
People tend not to check or challenge. They get excited by all this tech. So
yeah,
it poses the question, is there a real threat or an imminent threat to the fabric of society? People just not managing these tools effectively, not putting the governance in place, not assessing whether they're effective or not, or even where you mentioned, something goes into the system and is popped out 4 years later. Technically, is that someone else's copyright or content? Or go back to my example where I said maybe people's jobs will be massively impacted, and as much as we're talking about this, other people aren't talking about it and aren't aware of what's coming. And maybe our education system isn't set up, for a generative AI world, or an AI to get us ready to contribute in an AI world, whatever that means. So, there sort of appears to be societal threats as much as opportunities. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's got lots of threats. It's every piece of new software brings 1,000 new challenges and 1,000 new potential things. Like the power of iPhones opened up the power of hacking, and say like it's never going to go away. But I think Gary Vaynerchuk did a great interview, and he said he looked at and they were looking at Web3 and they were looking at VR, and it was saying, it's opened up all these avenues towards discrimination, racism, all horrible things. And he was saying, well, that's always been there and it's always probably going to be there. And he was being very frank with it, because he was saying people can pick on the bad things, but it's also, it comes from people. And at the end of the day, you can blame the technology all you want. We're the people solving it, we're the people creating it, and it's only working off past data. It's like if you get ads for certain things in your Instagram feed, it's a combination of what you've been searching for. It might try and recommend you and do data points to spar you off, but people are saying it promotes hate or promotes these things, which ChatGPT potentially can. I mean, I saw the example, I think CNBC posted it around, they were trying to get around the firewall that Google and Microsoft have put up to stop it from giving out any harmful speech or anything, and they got around it, and it showed you how they could eventually filter it to turn into a very horrible machine or very horrible ChatGPT. And it's a great article, I think, released about 2 weeks ago. So those issues are always going to be there. And I mean, it goes back to our last point, right? Making sure that there's always going to be bad people in the world. As much as I'd love for there not to be bad people, people want recognition. And some people's way of getting recognition is through doing very horrible things. And I think it's in business with companies that have obviously collapsed and shown that they're not built on the leadership they thought they were, right through to people on a personal level. So I think there's a lot of problems around it. I think the biggest problems I see is the sensitivity to bias, and that will always be the big thing, because one bad fact can spiral very quickly. I mean, look at the elections. Facebook are now, I think it's Facebook, or someone's being pulled up on it for potentially Twitter. So Twitter in the press at the moment for holding back on disclosing certain information, and they're getting an earful about that. And I mean, it's always going to be the thing. And I think ChatGPT is going to accelerate it, but it's also going to accelerate the great things as well. And I mean, naturally, you can say how bad we are as people, but we live in a pretty awesome world if you look at it compared to how many people are there and how many people are doing it. So I think it's it's going to be a lot of things, but there's a lot of things to worry about. And my big concern is context, truthfulness, factuality, and building those kind of things. So it can be great, but I would also just be very concerned about and at the end of the day, it's always the people that are going to use it. It's never the technology. As you said, the technology just runs off machine learning and reinforcement learning, and maybe we'll get to that iRobot situation where it does self-learning. And I mean, you saw it on the Facebook bot where they started chatting to each other, and that's a potential reality 10 years from now. But I think it's a great tool, but just some people are not going to use it in that way, unfortunately.
No, probably not. I sometimes wonder whether technology is presenting a mirror to us, and we don't like what we see, but we're keen to blame the tech as opposed to ourselves. That said, as a famous newsreader in the UK once said, why do we constantly focus on the negative news, not on the positive news? Every time in the UK, it's usually 10 p.m. at night when it comes on. So again, interesting times. So if we finish on a positive question, Tom, maybe, what do you see as the future of conversational AI? Like, what would it look like in, next year, 5 years, 10 years?
For me, 5 personal chatbots that are doing everything for me that I don't like doing. But I don't mean, I'm joking on that. I mean, I would love a person. I think it would be very powerful to have it, and especially for things in your own personal life, booking things and getting things done and reminders and scheduling assistance, it can be very powerful. But for 5-10 years, I mean, I always say people think I'm crazy because I think space travel will be very possible, because I just think it's like when the horse turned into the car. Henry Ford, it's a classic line. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. It's you have those people, and I think ChatGPT is that strive towards a new area. I think Elon Musk was, whether you love or hate him for what he's done at Twitter, what he's done with SpaceX is just incredible, because he's commercialized and opened it up past what used to be just governmental contracts. And I can see ChatGPT opening up all sorts of new industries. I mean, you look at, I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but I saw something. The amount of people starting their own businesses today compared to 30 years ago is ridiculous. Like, so many people have it, and so many people are creating side gigs, and so many people are creating the creator economy, that I think ChatGPT will accelerate that, and it will bring a lot of positive change, a lot of positive things. And if occasionally people have to be brought up on for using it the wrong way, so be it, because it, every challenge is a lesson, so people can learn from it. And sometimes it's the expense of a company or a person, but that's not to say that's a bad thing. But it's ultimately going to be very powerful in 10 years. And I always go back to what I think within my lifetime we will be going to other planets, because I think all it will take is one small maneuver. And like ChatGPT, that's why I say it's a hype at the moment, and rightly so a hype, like the internet bubble was a hype. I mean, certain people said it won't last and it won't be around. And there's an article in the New York Times saying, like, 1998, internet's a bubble, it's a hype, it's not going to exist. So it just shows you how wrong it is. And I think ChatGPT is the doors to a new way of potentially taking over websites or potentially looking at digital infrastructure. I mean, now, it used to be that you'd cold call people. Now you WhatsApp business people. Like it's just another change on how you do business and how you do things. And I think we'll have a lot more better singers. We'll have a lot more better film directors. We'll have a lot more better people in business operations. A lot more people that are younger, potentially coming up with more creative strategies at quicker rates. So I think it's a big positive. But as we said, just to be careful of those biases. And the main thing I have is being factual and being an honesty fact checker. So yeah, but very positive and very I think we're just getting started. Well, we are just getting started. God knows where we'll be in 10, 15 years.
No, it's kind of exciting and kind of scary, isn't it? But I do love that idea of digital assistant just allowing me to be more productive in less time. And I think that's the balance for me. You know, I don't want to be doing 40, 50, 60 hours a day with a digital assistant helping me double and treble that. But I wonder if we could get some time back, or maybe, as we mentioned earlier on, in the medical profession, you know, actually resource, augment medical professionals with this type of technology and not replace. To allow us to make better, clever decisions. But as you said earlier on, all tech creates more jobs than it destroys. The key bit is getting ready, though.
Yeah. And have you seen the film, or if anyone watching this has seen the film Her, which is 2013 with Joaquin Phoenix? It's a brilliant film, a little bit explicit at times, but it's a very good example of, when I watched it, a very good example of what we've got to come. And it was spot on with what we're seeing with ChatGPT. So you can look at all the bad things, but look at mental health if you have something, or look at the follow-on from booking appointments at the doctors, or looking at the follow-on from your insurance, or having that kind of, it can make a brand so much more personable, which I think is a big thing that people are really racing against. Because if I can get those updates that aren't annoying me, but kind of nudging me in a more personal, friendly manner, that I can kind of put a face to a brand. It's like when you go to the airport and you see the holographics. Like I saw one at Birmingham Airport recently, and it was like, get your passport ready, and a very friendly, approachable person that eventually will switch, that you'll just have on your phone. So yeah, as you're saying, it's going to be phenomenal with the world we live in, and hopefully I get to see it all. So
I hope so too. But you and I get to enjoy it. Tom, founder of the AI Journal and AI enthusiast, thank you so much indeed for coming on to DRUID Talks webcast today. Folks, that's all for today. As you heard from Tom, this is a very exciting technology, a very exciting space. It's not without its imperfections. That's true about any technology in the world, as we mentioned earlier on, but certainly the opportunities that this and conversational AI can create for businesses now, next year, and in 10 years' time opens up a whole world of opportunities. As Tom says, let's hope we're all around to enjoy those opportunities as well. Until our next webcast, thank you very much indeed.